A two-day summit on aid to Ukraine is underway in Brussels. EU leaders and heads of government are assuring support for Ukrainians fighting the barbaric Russia, even though there will be no breakthrough decisions. Everyone is waiting for US President-elect Donald Trump to take power and present a peace plan. There is no more important issue in Europe today than security. That is why a two-day European Union summit in Brussels was devoted almost entirely to what is happening on its eastern flank. As the Lithuanian president said, there can be no doubt about who is the victim and who is the aggressor in the war against Ukraine.
Russia is in the offensive mode. Russia is going forward. Russia feels to be stronger side in every possible negotiations, and it would lead not to just and sustainable peace.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was invited to the talks, stressed that, without help from Brussels and abroad, Putin will achieve his goal of destroying Ukraine and the Ukrainian nation.
The United States and EU and countries of Europe, this is very important. We need this unity to achieve peace. And I think only together the United States and Europe can really stop Putin and save Ukraine.
Brussels wants to help Ukraine, but has no intention of taking any groundbreaking decisions for the time being. The priority is to supply arms and ammunition to the brave Ukrainian soldiers. For the time being, the plan is to maintain and secure support for Ukraine. I am referring mainly to military support, the supply of air defense systems, artillery, ammunition, and what the soldiers need to defend the sovereignty of their country. But the EU is already waiting to see what US President-elect Donald Trump will do about the war in Ukraine. Trump proposes a peace plan, a stop to the bloodshed, and an end to the war that is claiming innocent victims every day.
Gotta be a deal. No, gotta be a deal. Too many people being killed. That is a war that's hard. Too many people. Gotta make a deal. And Putin has to make a deal too.
What deal?
Do you think Putin has to make a deal? And Putin would have never gone in if I was president. If I was president, we wouldn't have had inflation. Our oil prices would have been lower. I had a good relationship with Putin. He would have, despite the Russia hoax, which made it more difficult, if we had that election, if it were an honorable election, we wouldn't have had any of the problems that we're talking about right now.
Preferably as soon as possible. The barbaric Russian army is using the coming winter to attack Ukraine's energy infrastructure, which supplies people with heat and electricity. Energy terrorism is already affecting the population, hence NATO's urgent response.
19 systems are delivered to Ukraine to protect the critical infrastructure. So this will all be on the agenda, plus how to make sure that when peace comes, one day that we also think about the economy of Ukraine. Now,
Thank you so much.
While the Ukrainian president was in Brussels seeking diplomatic and military support, his country was being violently attacked by the Russians. Once again, they targeted civilians, this time the inhabitants of Kryvyi Rih and other Ukrainian towns. This kind of strategy, to paralyze the enemy through fear, to lower morale by massacring civilians, has been in use by the Russians from the very beginning. In retaliation, a Ukrainian drone strike deep inside Russia destroyed the stockpile of aviation fuel used for airstrikes against Ukraine. Today, sirens rang out again in Kyiv to warn of an airstrike. Residents scrambled for shelter. Antonina and her 8-year-old daughter have lost count of how many times they have had to hide from Russian bombs. I want to take my daughter to school in peace, go to work and live happily. But instead, we hide from rockets. And she is scared just the same every time. Unfortunately, this is how life has been for these people for 1,030 days.